thanks very much for doing this interview with Effects Pedal Planet. And obviously, you're a touring musician, going all over the place on stages all around the world. You've been to America and places like that, done tours in UK. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, all the way through Europe, really. And then I did a 6-week tour in America. And so through Europe and America, basically. I lived in Australia for a while, but I didn't really play there. So I mean a lot in the UK, and like I say now, widely into Europe and America as well. So
that's good credentials, I have to say. You're not doing gigs down the Dog and Duck, that's for sure.
Not anymore. The thing is, you have to do those gigs down the Dog and Duck in the beginning to get somewhere. But you get to a stage where you either take it seriously and you make the step, and like I say, it is a gamble, or you I mean, I'm not saying that the bands that play down the Dog and Duck aren't any good, because a lot of them are, but you often find that a lot of these people have professional jobs, and that's how they go about it, So to tour and go through Europe is just not possible, for these people. It's kind of, it can be kind of difficult to make that leap. But once you do, and you are committed, that you put hard work in. I'm not saying it works out every time, because it doesn't, but you just hope that it does,
Yeah. So I mean, you started off as, well, obviously you got very sort of blues influences and stuff like that, and sort of the Three Kings, Freddie, Albert, and BB, and so forth. But I have to listen to a lot of your music. I mean, blues music comes in lots of different styles, doesn't it? I mean, you've got people like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Rory Gallagher. They're very sort of raw, intense, almost unpolished production-wise, if you like. But with yourself, I would put you more in sort of like a Joe Bonamassa type of song and sound. Yeah. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not. I mean, to be honest, I kind of just. I've always done this. I just play music and I let everyone else kind of like pigeonhole where it is they want to put me. And my style's developed, through years of listening to everybody. And I'm a massive Clapton fan. I always have been. But I'm a fan of everyone, really. What I used to do years ago was I would go to the local library every week or every 2 weeks, and you could hire a maximum of 4 CDs, I think, back then.
I used to do the same.
Yeah, and I would basically get 2 or 3 CDs out of people that I knew, of either new albums or albums that I hadn't heard, or whatever, of people that I knew. Yeah. But I made a point, week in, week out, of getting 1 album of someone I'd never heard of.
Yeah.
A guitar player, basically, most of the time. Sometimes it'd just be singers, but guitar player, just to kind of like broaden my spectrum. So it went through from everyone from B.B. King at the blues end to Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and, everyone else at that end. And, Nuno and, everyone really, which is Sambora, loads and loads of guitar players.
Yeah.
And is that I went through a stage, or not just a stage, it was kind of like the beginning of my career, where I just couldn't appreciate or stand musically authentic blues. I know it sounds crazy. And the old stuff, I used to think, it sounds terrible to me. I don't know why people would buy this. And I remember a story that I do sometimes tell is that Eric Clapton, I buy everything that Clapton comes out with, whether it's good or bad, basically.
We've got similar tastes.
Back then I bought the From the Cradle album, okay? Now, it was a summer's day. I went into Woolworths. I bought a CD. I thought, great. Day came out. Get it in the car. Get the windows down. Get this blasting. I made myself listen to the whole album, took it out of the CD player, and threw it out the window, literally, as I was driving. And I thought, this is the worst album Clapton's ever made. I just don't get it. Anyway, over the next 2 months, I'd listened to a few more bits, and I think a couple of tracks were played on radio on the Paul Jones show, and this. And I don't know what it was, but my kind of understanding of where it all comes from had developed. So I had no option but to go back to Wolf and buy another copy. So I ended up with 2 covers and 1 copy of. And now you whether you like it or not, or whether you have to appreciate, and this is the point, is I probably didn't appreciate it, is that at that time, is that without all of these people, and without the growth, and without the terrible sounding recordings of the 1930s from Robert Johnson, and without, you know, all the Kings, and without all these people that musically, I mean, you put any one of those people against Bonamassa today, and he literally wiped the floor on a technical, even sounding. He could play two strings and sound better than all of these guys put together. Yeah. But without all of those guys, you don't get Bonamassa, and that's the point. It's like the evolution of the music.
Yeah, I said something similar. I saw a tweet on or something on Twitter quite recently, and this is saying, of which decade of music do you favour most? And it was sort of the decade from the 50s, the 60s, 70s, up to modern times. Right. And there was lots of different opinions, and I went straight to the earliest one possible, the 50s, and my reasons were exactly that. Without that groundwork, without the people of like Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and you wouldn't have Keith Richards and people like that. It evolves, you know, and the very basis of rock and roll and blues is from the 30s.
And to be honest, in 40 years' time,
like that.
If in 40 years' time they'll say, well, if you didn't have Bonamassa, you wouldn't have whoever it is then.
Yeah, Sean Webster.
Well, but you're right in regards to, I guess, just going back to your question about my style being a bit smoother and less raw, is I guess I was always more commercialized with the blues than the authentic 30s, 40s, 50s blues thing, and that's kind of how my style developed. So although, you know, I can play some of the real old blues licks, and I always loved that quote that B.B. King said when he said when I play my guitar, I don't like to shout at people, I like to talk to them. Yeah. And that's, you know, when people sometimes ask me to play really super fast licks, it's probably because I can't, but I just say, well, I'd like to talk to you and not shout.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm not a super fast player, you know. We've got some in the forum. We've got a female guitarist called Jackie Taylor, and we're going to interview her next. And she is a phenomenal guitarist, and she can do all the speed licks. She can do it all, you know. But it is very much different styles, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly.
But I mean, blues, it's, you know, you got that sort of raw sort of background from the early years when effects weren't used really. And then it really was sort of like maybe the 50s and 60s where people then started to use tremolo and bring that into you know, blues music. And I was listening to a lot of your songs yesterday, and you're using a lot of trem and things like that. So where did it start with you with effects, and what was
I'd come up with asked me a question yesterday. I looked through them, and I thought I'd come up with my answer, but it's changed today because I had a flashback. There was my first effects pedal, if you like, was a multi-effects thing, and it was I think it was called a Boss ME. I want to say 30. It was like a 5 or 6 pedals interchangeable with all of the stuff in. And it was in a multi-effects pedal, and that would have been towards the late 80s, I think I got that.
Yeah,
and that had everything in. But I mean, you know, whether you like Boss or whether you don't like Boss doesn't really matter. But back then, if you compare it to what's available now, you know, I mean, I had a Strat playing through this ME30 or whatever it was into a PV Bandit 65, and you know, first of all, you're running a transistor amp. And you know, you got, you know, fair enough, you got a Fender Strat which stands up for itself, and you got the processed digital effects, which I don't know, a lot of the time back then they just weren't that great.
No, and they don't cut through. They don't cut through a mix.
No, and you're trying to boost the treble to cut above someone else, and you end up having that screech, which I've, and funny enough, I've come across that on quite a few modern day pedals, which is why I've come into them. I've always, well, not always, but in the last 15, 20 years, I've always used pedals, you know. And even if there's, because a lot of also even the old amps, you know, even in fact the amp that I've got now, which is a Fender Tone Master, great amp, it's got no reverb built in, and I find reverb I mean, some players love it, you know, as dry as anything, but I
Mm.
love so I have to, even if you know you fly out somewhere and you're doing a festival, and either the amp's got to have reverb or I've got to take a reverb pedal with me, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, the first thing, like I say, was the digital ME30. But well, I mean, you know, as you do as a veteran player, it kind of like degrades over a short amount of time, and then you know you have to get something else.
Mm.
So, like you say, you know, a lot of these things they don't cut through, and you know, I mean, I had the same problem with what is it called, the OCD? Yeah, the OCD,
The
which is
full tone OCD. Yeah.
yeah. I had one of them. It just, I put it on and I just couldn't get the right. I couldn't get the sweet spot. It was, for me, for my amp, for the guitar that I'm playing now,
Mm.
it just either too screechy or it didn't cut through.
Mm.
So you know, it comes in, you try it, and it's on again.
Mm. It is trial and error. I'm the same. I've got a fuzz at the minute, which is a great fuzz, but I just don't think it really works with the signal chain that I've got, and I'm not sure it really interacts very well with my amp and with my guitar.
Yeah.
And I think you do have to try a few things out. And pedals aren't just pedals. They behave differently depending on your style and what you've got.
I kind of do now is, I mean, like I say, I've got an amazing amp, the Fender Tone Master, and you know it's an '80s kind of amp, but and Clapton used it, and loads of people use it, Richie Sambora, loads of famous people, but I use it. It's a 100-watt head. But I don't use. I use it basically on a clean channel, and I don't drive it to break up. I use it for the headroom, and I get all of my tone out of my pedals. That's how that's how I do it now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but if you want me to kind of like talk about what pedals I use and why I use them,
yeah, well, that was going to be the next thing. Is I mean, what are you using now? I mean, obviously, you start. We all start off with a small Boss unit or something like that, and
yeah,
I did. And then 2 years ago, I invested in a huge monstrosity of a board. But I have my because I tend to play in covers bands, tribute bands, and things like that. So if the band wants to play a song and the guitarist in that song is using a particular effect, I need to have that effect available. So it's very much a tool for me. But I mean, what is your setup like now? What's
well, I mean, it's about to change literally in the next 2 days, possibly, because I just bought a pedal 2 days. I took delivery of a new pedal 2 days ago, which is probably going to change altogether. I'll tell you what that is in a minute. But in a minute, basically, I was looking for a tone, and I'm not great at describing kind of what tone I want until I hear it. And so I was, in and out. Like I said, I tried the OCD. I've got 2 tube screamers, an old one and a new one. Didn't work for me. I tried all sorts of things, and I stumbled across this company in America called, I think they're called Snouse, or SNOUSE. And I believe now they may not or may well still be trading, but they're taking a break. But their take on it was that they hand build a pedal called a black box. Now you can have a black box duo, which is what I've got, or you can get the single black box. And the black box circuitry is based on the old Marshall Blues Breaker. Now, Sabano's Marshall Blues Breakers at the time was quite a lot of money, but this company said that they faithfully replicated all of the stuff with them, and so my main pedal now is this double Marshall Blues Breaker, and I use one of them that's on all of the time for my tone, and then I use the other one as a boost for solos, basically. So it's like having 2 Marshall Blues Breakers, and then I come out of that, if I remember rightly, and I fell in love with a couple of years ago the Strymon kind of theories.
Yeah.
So I've got the Strymon. I'm just trying to think what it is now. It's like the delay. I took photos so I could get them off my phone, but now we're doing it on the phone.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about it. I'm trying to think what Strymon it is. I can let you know. In fact, if you bear with me 1 second, the screen may well go black. Is that a problem?
Well, I'll tell you what. You find it out because we're just about to run out of time on this meet. So I'll call you back. You find it out, and we'll re in a few moments.
Okay, no problem. All right.
All right. Cheers.